stir a little bit this week. The tropics will be the focus, likely for most of this week. The National Hurricane Center watching this area of low pressure that's in the western Atlantic, just off the coast of Florida right now, that's going to drift west over the peninsula and then eventually into the Gulf. It's a bit odd, this steering pattern, but it happens, being steered by these larger scale features.
Yeah, but before this system, the storm even thinks of getting into the national, at least on the National Hurricane Center's plate. Until they really start to monitor any organized development, we are looking at some slow movement out of the Atlantic and towards the Gulf. And regardless of its non-tropical characteristics now, it's got tropical rain to work with, right? Let's go ahead and bring in, we have Fox Weather hurricane specialist Bryan Norcross. Bryan, we've been talking about it throughout the morning. Couple of ways to look at it. Florida's in for a wild ride regardless, but a lot of people want to know what we could see develop.
We're under a flood watch, but that's because, you know, pretty much the metropolitan area of Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and the Palm Beach has all been paved over with concrete and asphalt. And so when it rains hard here, it tends to flood, and people know which neighborhoods do that and which intersections go underwater. It's not a widespread kind of flood situation, but localized for sure. So they have the flood watch up for slow-moving tropical downpour. So here's what we have that you were showing offshore of the east coast of Florida is this disturbance. And what this graphic is saying is nothing is going to happen until it gets over here in the Gulf of Mexico, if anything happens, and then this broad area where there might be some development. They have 10% for the next 2 days with the idea that it's just going to get into the Gulf here on Wednesday, so probably not through Wednesday, more likely when it gets over in here if it develops, and still in the low range only at 30%, but that's what this is telling you here. All right, let's look at this thing close up, and then we have the computer analyze where it thinks the circulation is, and you notice it's up here. So draw a line kind of like this, and boy, that looks kind of like a front or something, and you would be right if you thought that, because this used to be part of a front, and the air up in here is much drier aloft. Not that it can't rain and not that it won't moisten up. At the surface, it's very humid, but aloft it's drier, and that's why we see all this intense thunderstorm activity kind of to the south of the line. It's just beginning to pick up the tropical moisture and make more of a circulation. And then it's going to run into Florida, so of course that's going to slow things down. Here's where the rain is now, and I want you to notice on this side everything is sinking south. And this is why, as this kind of bundle of moisture here gets into the metropolitan area down here in southeast Florida, then we tend to get the convergence in the afternoon heating, and that's when they think the thunderstorms will really kick up. So that flood watch starts at 2 p.m. here on the southeast coast. Also, just a rule of thumb, in the southern part of the peninsula, when the storms come from the north, they tend to be heavier. And the reason is because cool air aloft is being pulled down, and you get a bigger contrast between the heat at the ground and aloft, and so the storms go up higher. Sometimes you can even get hail with the south-moving storm. So we'll see. That's why they have the flood alert in effect. So let's look at what the computer says is going to happen. There you see where you see the moisture there. This is the dark green batch of moisture, and you see it includes the southern part of the peninsula. Then there's kind of a dry tongue up in here. Notice this. All right, so we'll watch all this stuff go into motion, and here we are today, right about now. Now, moving forward in time, we'll go to tomorrow morning, and you see it's barely moving, but the area of dense moisture is over the southern part of the state. The northern part of the state is in that little dry tongue right there, but also the west coast of the state, up around Tallahassee, may get part of this general circulation that's kind of going around like that. Just a big, broad circulation, but pulling tropical moisture here from the south and then wrapping it around in. All right, then Wednesday goes across the state so that by Wednesday morning, it's offshore of Tampa, plus or minus. This is all very plus or minus. Notice still a lot of moisture here over the state, and we're starting to get moisture here into the Gulf Coast. Thursday, then this is where we have the question. This would be the time period if it's going to develop most likely. So we're going to watch for the northern Gulf Coast here, and then moving on north and kind of dying out. But when we look at the rainfall totals, don't look exact here, but you see we have this cluster here on the southeast coast, and then western part of the peninsula. There's where that dry tongue is not quite as much here. And then look over on the Gulf Coast. It's another bullseye because this is that Thursday, Friday time frame. No doubt we're going to see flood watches for the New Orleans metro area along the Gulf Coast there as that moisture kind of sits there and it slows down. And then we'll see what happens. That could last into the weekend there, guys. So this is a kind of a two-stage thing. It's Florida here for the next couple of days. Then we'll look at the Gulf Coast and we'll see if the conditions are really not ideal, but there is a chance that sitting over that very warm Gulf water, we may see this thing spin up into at least a depression. It's not hard for that to happen over that part of the Gulf Coast. Guys?
Yeah, I think as humans, we like to assign a name or at least a title to something in order for it to feel like it's going to, I don't know, have more meaning in our life. But regardless, I think, as you mentioned, Bryan, Florida, prone to flooding, some of these areas with just one heavy storm. Miami, Fort Lauderdale, we've seen it happen before. We'll pay attention. And New Orleans, of course. I mean, it's a lot of rain over the Big Easy. So we'll see how it all plays out. Fox Weather Hurricane Specialist Bryan Norcross.
Slow-moving rain, too.
Slow-moving rain, which is important to note. Yeah. Thank you, Bryan.
Exactly.